Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer. I am a paleobiologist and a research fellow here at ELSI and also at University of Cambridge in the UK. And I'd like to talk to you now about the evolutionary origin of the animals, including us. So, the eon of time which we live in today is called the Phanerozoic. This means visible life, or literally visible animals. This began 541 million years ago in the Cambrian period. This is the time when many of the modern animal groups first appear in the fossil record. You can see some examples of these up here. So this is a time when there was a great increase in the diversity of life, and this is called the Cambrian explosion. So what led to the Cambrian explosion? Why did this happen at that time? To understand this, we need to look back at the geological record of life just before this, in the Proterozoic Eon, meaning earlier life. At this time, the planet was quite different from that of today. Levels of oxygen in the atmosphere and the oceans began to rise from initially very low levels. And the oceans may still have been quite toxic to modern animals, with very low levels of oxygen and high levels of iron and sulfur. Life forms were still microscopic, such as photosynthetic cyanobacteria, whose colonies form mounds called stromatolites at the edge of the sea. But at this time, no plants or animals were yet living on the land. So let's take a closer look at life in the Proterozoic Eon. This is a microfossil, very small fossil called Bangiomorpha. This is thought to be a type of red algae, and so a relative of plants. And this is from around 1.2 billion years ago. Fossils like Bangiomorpha show that life forms had already evolved multicellularity, many cells in their body by this time, but they were still very small. For example, Bangiomorpha was less than 1 millimeter long and very thin. Later in the Proterozoic, we have a geological period called the Cryogenian, which means cold birth. During this time, the planet experienced some of the greatest changes in climate that it's ever had in its history. There were at least 2 massive glaciations, ice ages that covered much of the surface of the planet in ice, and each lasted for millions of years. These glaciations were so severe that they are called snowball Earth events. These may have restricted the abundance of many life forms, including the photosynthetic microorganisms, which produce oxygen and form the base of the food chain for everything else. But life survived the snowball Earth events, and there are fossils from the Cryogenian period. These include mysterious circles in the rock, such as the Twitcher discs, which are from the Twitcher rock formation in the Mackenzie Mountains from Canada. These are around 1 centimeter wide, and they may perhaps be simple relatives of animals. But this simplicity means that they could instead be colonies of microorganisms, rather bacteria or microalgae, and not animals at all. As well as fossils of animal and plant bodies, ancient rocks can also preserve molecular fossils. These are also known as biomarkers. These are molecules which are known to be produced by living groups, such as animals like sponges. Sponge biomarkers, like this molecule here, have been found in cryogenian rocks which are more than 635 million years old. This suggests that sponges, which are the most ancient of the living animals, had evolved by this time. So where are they in the fossil record? This tiny fossil is less than 1 millimeter wide, yet it is similar in shape to simple sponges that are still alive today, with a central opening, like those you can see here, which may have functioned to draw through water as it fed on small particles from the water flow. This could suggest that sponges had indeed evolved by this time, that the animals had begun to diversify, but they were still mostly very small and so very rare to fossilize. At the end of the snowball Earth events, we enter a new geological period, the Ediacaran period, running from 635 million years ago up to the Cambrian boundary at 541 million years ago. During this time, the Earth became more hospitable to animals, with a warmer climate and potentially an increase in the abundance of microorganisms, those microorganisms that produce oxygen as well as food for animals. Some Ediacaran rocks, such as these from Newfoundland, Canada, show changes in color from red to gray that are due to changes in the chemistry of iron in the rock. This shows that at least here, at this time, there were increases in the level of oxygen. So there is another rise in the amount of oxygen in the ocean right at this time. This increase in oxygen may have allowed life forms, such as early animals, to reach large size, to grow to new sizes not seen in life before. This is because large animals, like us, need lots of oxygen in order to gain energy from our food by respiration. From this time, a wide range of large life forms appear in the fossil record. These are known as the Ediacaran biota. Some of these look a little like living animals, like this fossil creature called Spragina at the bottom here. Others look more unusual, such as these rangiomorphs, the group which I work on myself. These had bodies that were made up of many small branches. This type of shape is known as a fractal, meaning broken shape. And this reconstruction here was computer generated using a fractal algorithm. Rangiomorphs are named after a fossil called Rangeia, which you can see in this example here with exceptionally preserved branches. Rangeia was discovered in Namibia, Africa, in the early 20th century, among the rocks of this beautiful but dry landscape. Geologically, these fossils from Namibia are among the younger members of the Ediacaran biota. The very oldest of these large Ediacaran fossils are found in Newfoundland, Canada, such as these beds of fossils at Mistaken Point, which is now a World Heritage Site. These beds are covered in fossils, which you can see here as pale lines all over the rock. If we look in close up at some of these fossils from Newfoundland, we can see that here, Ediacaran fossils are preserved as faint impressions on the surface of the rock. Some of these are really very large, such as this fossil called Trapacia, which is a few centimeters wide, but more than 1 meter long, extending like a ribbon along the rock. Among these strange forms are some others which look more like living animals, such as this triangular fossil within here, called Thectardis. This may be an impression of a simple sponge of a similar shape to the ones we see today. The Ediacaran period is named after another important fossil site in the Ediacara Hills of South Australia. Ediacaran fossils from Australia include other mysterious types, such as this large fossil called Dickinsonia, with many fine branches or segments, as well as others like this small fossil here called Parvancorina, which is the shape of the English letter T. Rocks from Australia preserve the transition all the way through the Ediacaran to the Cambrian. Among these fossils are small burrows which show the traces of movement on and through the sediment of the seafloor. These fossils show that by the late Ediacaran, active moving animals had evolved. As we move into the Cambrian period, worldwide we see many more fossils of active moving animals, such as this fossil called Galliactina, which looks very similar to modern ctenophores, also known as comb jellies. This fossil is from Chengjiang in China, a famous place where exceptional fossils of soft-bodied animals like this can be found, although these are otherwise rare in the fossil record. Another place where exceptional Cambrian fossils have been found is the Burgess Shale in the Canadian Rocky Mountains. These fossils include relatives of modern arthropods, the group which includes shrimp, crabs, and insects today. These fossils include this large predator called Anomalocaris. This dangerous animal was up to 1 meter long and had huge claws in front of its mouth for catching prey. What was it eating? Well, among Cambrian fossils are also small fish-like animals, such as this fossil from the Burgess Shale called Pikaia. Pikaia was an active swimming animal with a head that had sense organs and a nerve cord which ran along its back. These features show that Pikaia was a distant relative of vertebrates, animals with backbones like us. Fossils like Pikaia tell us that some of the most important human features, like our brain, have evolutionary origins among very early animals of the Cambrian, more than 500 million years ago. Thank you.